The bank was bustling with activity as the clock neared lunchtime. A man in his mid-30s stepped inside, wearing a faded MAGA hat and a worn-out jacket. His presence drew a few subtle glances, some judgmental, others indifferent. He walked up to the counter, clutching a small folder of documents, his hands slightly trembling. "I need to withdraw some money," he said to the young teller behind the glass. The teller barely looked at him before pointing to a sign. "You'll need to talk to the manager for that amount," she said curtly. The man nodded and made his way to the manager's office, feeling the weight of the stairs following him. Inside the glass-enclosed office, the manager, a sharp-suited man with an air of authority, barely looked up from his desk. "How can I help you?" the manager asked, his tone clipped. The man adjusted his hat nervously. "I need to withdraw $10,000. It's for an urgent matter." He slid his papers across the desk. The manager glanced at the papers, then at the man, his expression hardening. "I'm sorry, sir, but we can't process this request today." The man frowned, his voice faltering. "Why not?" "The account has the funds. I need this money urgently." The manager leaned back, crossing his arms. "It's policy. You'll need additional verification. Maybe come back another day." The man's face turned red with frustration. "I don't understand. I've provided all the necessary documents. This is my account." The manager's gaze lingered on the MAGA hat for a moment before he stood up, signaling that the conversation was over. "I'm sorry, but there's nothing I can do for you today." Humiliated and angry, the man picked up his papers and left the office. On his way out, he could hear faint whispers and stifled laughter from some of the staff. He walked out of the bank, his heart pounding with a mix of shame and rage. The next day, the same bank was running its usual routine when a sleek black Tesla pulled up outside. The doors opened and a tall, confident man stepped out, flanked by a small entourage. The staff noticed immediately. This wasn't an ordinary customer. The man walked through the glass doors with an air of quiet authority. He wasn't wearing a suit, just a simple black shirt and jeans, but there was something about him that made everyone sit up straight. The bank manager came out of his office, adjusting his tie nervously. "Good morning, sir. How can we assist you today?" The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked around the room, his gaze sharp and calculating. Finally, he turned to the manager and smiled faintly. "I believe you turned away one of my employees yesterday," he said, his voice calm but carrying an unmistakable edge. The manager blinked, confused. "I'm sorry, sir. Who are you referring to?" The man reached up and removed his sunglasses, revealing a face that was instantly recognizable. The room fell silent. "Elon Musk," someone whispered, barely audible. The manager froze, his confident demeanor crumbling. What he said next left everyone stunned. Elon placed his sunglasses on the counter with deliberate precision, his piercing eyes locked onto the manager. The tension in the room was palpable and the staff stood frozen, unsure whether to intervene or retreat. "The man you refused yesterday," Elon began, his tone calm but laced with unmistakable authority, "wasn't just an ordinary customer. He's been a key part of one of my latest projects. And yet you treated him like he didn't belong here." The manager stammered, his face turning pale. "Mr. Musk, I assure you, there must have been a misunderstanding. I wasn't aware." Elon raised a hand, cutting him off mid-sentence. "You weren't aware because you didn't care enough to find out," he said sharply. "You judged him by his appearance, didn't you?" The silence in the room deepened, and the staff exchanged nervous glances. Elon's words weren't loud, but they carried a weight that demanded attention. "I'd like to see this policy of yours," Elon continued, his voice unwavering. "The one that lets you decide who's worthy of their own money." The manager's lips quivered as he attempted to respond. It wasn't personal, sir. We have protocols, and sometimes additional verifications are needed for large withdrawals." "Protocols?" Elon interrupted, his gaze narrowing. "Or prejudices?" The room felt colder now, as if the weight of Elon's presence had drawn all the warmth out. He gestured to the teller who had watched the scene unfold from behind the counter. "You," Elon said, pointing to her. "Tell me, what did you think when he walked in yesterday? Did you think he looked suspicious? Or did you just decide he wasn't worth your respect because of a hat?" The teller's face turned crimson and she stammered, I didn't mean any harm, Mr. Musk. It's just easier to ignore someone who doesn't fit your idea of a valuable customer," Elon finished for her, his voice soft but scathing. The bank manager took a step forward, attempting to regain some control. "Mr. Musk, I assure you, we will review our practices and ensure this never happens again." Elon smiled faintly, but it wasn't a smile of reassurance. "No," he said, his tone turning icy. "That won't be necessary. I've already decided to pull all Tesla and SpaceX accounts from this bank." The manager's face fell, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "Please, Mr. Musk, let's not be hasty. We value your business, and this was an isolated incident." Elon stepped closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "You didn't value his business yesterday, and he's more valuable to me than any account you'll ever handle." The words hit harder than any shout could have. Elon turned to leave, his entourage following closely, but just as he reached the door, he paused and glanced back over his shoulder. "Oh, and one more thing," he said, his voice carrying across the room. "That man you humiliated, he'll be the one handling the transfer of Tesla's accounts. Make sure you give him the respect he deserves this time." With that, he walked out, leaving the bank staff in stunned silence. No one dared to move or speak for several long moments. Outside, Elon stepped into his Tesla where the man in the MAGA hat was waiting in the passenger seat. "Did they get the message?" the man asked, his voice still carrying a hint of the nervousness he'd felt the day before. Elon smiled as he started the car. "Oh, they got it," he said, "but this is just the beginning." The Tesla hummed softly as Elon drove through the city, his expression unreadable. The man in the MAGA hat sat quietly, occasionally glancing at Elon as if trying to gauge his mood. Finally, he broke the silence. "I didn't expect you to do that," the man said, his voice hesitant. "Pulling Tesla's accounts from the bank, wasn't that a bit extreme?" Elon's eyes remained on the road, his voice calm but firm. "They didn't just insult you. They insulted every hard-working person who's ever been judged for how they look or what they believe. If I let that slide, what message would I be sending?" The man nodded slowly, absorbing Elon's words. "Still, it's a lot of money. They're going to feel that for a long time." "That's the point," Elon replied, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Sometimes, the only way to teach people a lesson is to hit them where it hurts." The man leaned back in his seat, letting out a long breath. "You didn't have to do any of this, you know. I'm just an engineer. There's no reason for someone like you to go out of your way for someone like me." Elon's hands tightened on the steering wheel, and for a moment his expression darkened. "There's every reason," he said quietly. "I've been where you are. People forget that I wasn't always the richest man in the world. I've slept on couches. I've been broke. I've been dismissed and underestimated. And I'll never forget how it felt." The man looked at Elon, surprised by the sudden vulnerability in his voice. "I guess I didn't think of it that way," he admitted. Elon glanced at him, his gaze steady. "You're not just an engineer. You're part of something bigger. And if someone like that bank manager can make you feel small, what do you think happens to the people who don't have anyone to stand up for them?" The man didn't respond, but his silence spoke volumes. As they pulled into the parking lot of a sleek, modern office building, Elon parked the car and turned to face him. "Come with me," he said. The man hesitated. "Where are we going?" Elon opened his door and stepped out. "To make sure this doesn't happen again." Curiosity tugging at him, the man followed Elon into the building. Inside, they were greeted by a flurry of activity, employees typing furiously at computers, others discussing designs and numbers on large screens. It was a hive of innovation, and the energy was palpable. Elon led him to a glass-walled conference room, where a small group of executives was already waiting. As they entered, all eyes turned to Elon, their conversations halting mid-sentence. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elon began, his voice carrying an authoritative edge, "meet Michael, one of the brightest engineers on our team. Yesterday, he experienced something that should never happen to anyone who works for me. Or anyone. Period." Michael froze, caught off guard by the sudden attention. Elon continued, his gaze sweeping over the room. What happened to him wasn't just a personal insult. It was a failure of the very systems we're trying to change, and I want to make sure we're doing everything in our power to fix that, not just for our employees but for society as a whole. One of the executives leaned forward, her brow furrowed. "What are you suggesting, Elon?" Elon's eyes glimmered with determination. "We're going to create a fund," he said, "for anyone who's ever been denied dignity because of how they look, where they come from, or what they believe. And I want Tesla and SpaceX at the forefront of this initiative." The room buzzed with murmurs, some intrigued, others skeptical. Michael stared at Elon, his mind racing. "You're serious about this?" Elon looked at him and smiled. "Dead serious. No one should have to fight for their basic humanity. And if we don't take the lead, who will?" Michael felt a lump rise in his throat. For the first time in years, he felt seen. Not just as an employee, but as a person. As the meeting progressed, Michael couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something much bigger. After the meeting, Michael followed Elon out of the conference room, his mind still reeling from what had just transpired. The thought of a global fund dedicated to addressing dignity and fairness was overwhelming, and the fact that it had stemmed from his own experience made it feel surreal. "Elon," Michael started, his voice tentative, "why me? There are hundreds of people who work for you. Why go through all this trouble just because of what happened to me at a bank?" Elon stopped walking and turned to face him, his expression serious. "Michael, this isn't just about you. It's about what you represent. Every person who's ever been overlooked, judged, or treated unfairly because of how they appear or what they believe, they need someone to stand up for them. Today, that someone happens to be you. Tomorrow, it'll be someone else." Michael nodded, though he still felt a lingering doubt. "But what if people think I'm just a tool in a PR stunt? That this is just about publicity for Tesla?" Elon smirked, the corner of his mouth curling up in that familiar, confident way. "Let them think whatever they want. Actions speak louder than any headline. And trust me, this isn't about PR. It's about setting an example." They reached the main lobby where the building's massive glass doors let in beams of sunlight. As they stepped outside, Michael noticed a small group of reporters and photographers gathered near the entrance. Word of Elon's earlier confrontation at the bank had already spread, and the media smelled a story. One reporter stepped forward, microphone in hand. "Mr. Musk, is it true that you've pulled all Tesla and SpaceX accounts from the bank over an alleged incident of discrimination?" Elon paused, his expression unreadable for a moment. Then he spoke, his voice measured but firm. "It's true. Yesterday, one of my employees was treated unfairly, not because of any policy, but because of a judgment made about his appearance. That's unacceptable, not just for him, but for anyone." The reporter pressed on. "But some critics are saying this move is excessive. Do you really think it's your place to intervene in situations like this?" Elon's gaze hardened. "Let me ask you something. If you saw someone being treated unfairly, would you step in? Or would you stand by and let it happen because it's not your place?" The reporter faltered, caught off guard by the directness of the question. Elon continued, his voice growing more passionate. "We live in a world where people are too quick to judge and too slow to act. If I have the resources and the platform to make a difference, then it is my place. And it should be yours too." The cameras clicked furiously, capturing every word. Michael stood off to the side, watching in awe as Elon turned what could have been a simple soundbite into a rallying cry for change. As the reporters threw more questions, Elon raised a hand to signal he was done. "That's all for now. Actions will speak louder than words, and we're just getting started." He turned back to Michael, motioning for him to follow. As they walked toward the parking lot, Michael couldn't help but smile. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he was part of something bigger than himself. But as they reached the car, Michael noticed something strange. A black SUV parked across the street, its windows tinted so dark that it was impossible to see inside. "Elon," he said cautiously, nodding toward the vehicle. "Do you see that?" Elon glanced at the SUV, his expression tightening ever so slightly. "I see it," he said quietly, his voice low. "Get in the car." Michael hesitated. "What's going on?" Elon didn't answer immediately. Instead, he scanned the area, his sharp eyes taking in every detail. "Let's just say not everyone is happy about what we're doing," he finally said, opening the car door. "And some of them aren't afraid to make that known." Michael felt a chill run down his spine as he climbed into the Tesla. As the car pulled out of the parking lot, he couldn't shake the feeling that the day's events were far from over. The Tesla glided silently down the highway, but the tension in the car was anything but quiet. Michael glanced nervously at the rearview mirror, where the black SUV remained a steady shadow, maintaining its distance but never losing sight of them. "Elon," Michael said, his voice tight. "Who are they? Is this some kind of protest or something worse?" Elon's eyes remained on the road, his expression calm but focused. "It's hard to say. Could be nothing, or it could be someone trying to send a message." Michael frowned. "A message? About what? The bank thing?" Elon let out a dry laugh. "It's never just one thing. When you challenge the status quo, you make enemies, powerful ones. Some of them don't like being reminded that their influence has limits." Michael leaned back in his seat, his mind racing. "And now, I'm in the middle of it," he muttered. "You're not in the middle," Elon corrected. "You're part of the solution, but solutions aren't always popular." The car sped through a quiet stretch of road, the city lights fading into the distance. The SUV still followed, a silent reminder of unseen forces at play. Elon reached over to the touchscreen on the dashboard and tapped a few buttons. The car's autopilot engaged, and Elon turned his attention fully to Michael. "Listen," he said, his voice steady but serious. "There's something I haven't told you yet. This fund we're creating, it's not just about money or making a statement. It's about uncovering the systems that let things like what happened to you happen in the first place." Michael's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "There are patterns," Elon explained. "Banks, corporations, governments. They all have systems in place that quietly discriminate, exploit, and manipulate. Most people don't notice because it's hidden in plain sight. But once you start pulling on those threads—" He didn't finish the sentence, but the implication was clear. Michael shook his head, his stomach twisting. "So this isn't just about me, or even that bank. It's about dismantling the whole system?" Elon nodded. "Exactly. And that's why they're watching. They know what's coming, and they're scared." Michael's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden flash of headlights. A second black SUV appeared ahead of them, pulling onto the road and blocking their path. "What the hell?" Michael exclaimed, gripping the armrest. Elon's jaw tightened, but his hands moved with practiced precision. He tapped the touchscreen again, and the Tesla responded immediately, accelerating and swerving onto a side road. The first SUV followed, its engine roaring as it tried to close the distance. "Hold on," Elon said, his voice calm but urgent. The Tesla's speed increased, its electric motor humming like a storm. They weaved through the narrow streets, the car's AI predicting every turn with uncanny accuracy. Michael clung to his seat, his heart pounding. "This is insane. Who are these people?" Elon didn't answer. Instead, he focused on the road ahead, his mind calculating a dozen possibilities at once. As they approached an intersection, Elon made a sharp turn onto a dimly lit alleyway. The Tesla came to an abrupt stop, and Elon quickly shut off the lights, plunging them into darkness. "Stay quiet," he whispered. The two SUVs roared past the alley, their drivers unaware of the Tesla's sudden disappearance. For a moment, there was only silence, broken only by Michael's ragged breathing. "What now?" Michael asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Elon leaned back in his seat, his expression unreadable. "Now," he said quietly, "we find out who's pulling the strings." Michael stared at him, realizing that this wasn't just a fight about fairness or dignity anymore. They were up against something much bigger and much darker than either of them had anticipated. The alley remained eerily silent, the faint hum of the Tesla the only sound as Elon pulled out his phone. His fingers moved swiftly, inputting commands into an encrypted app. "What are you doing?" Michael asked, still shaken. "Tracking them," Elon replied, his voice calm but resolute. "They think they're the only ones watching, but I've been prepared for this. Every Tesla has advanced tracking and surveillance capabilities, not just for us, but for situations exactly like this." Michael blinked, the gravity of Elon's words sinking in. "You're saying you've been expecting something like this?" Elon nodded, his expression grim. "You don't disrupt industries and challenge global power structures without making enemies. This isn't the first time I've been followed, and it won't be the last." The screen on Elon's phone lit up with a real-time map. Two blinking dots, representing the SUVs, moved steadily down the road, unaware they were being tracked. "Got 'em," Elon muttered. "Now let's see where they're headed." He engaged the Tesla's autopilot and let the car crawl silently out of the alley. They kept a safe distance, following the blinking dots as they navigated through the city. "Where do you think they're going?" Michael asked, his voice tinged with both fear and curiosity. "If I had to guess," Elon said, "somewhere they think they're safe, but they're about to find out they're wrong." After several tense minutes, the SUVs pulled into a gated compound on the outskirts of the city. The tall, shadowy structure loomed against the night sky, its perimeter lined with cameras and guards. "Looks like we found their nest," Elon said, his tone sharp. Michael stared at the compound, his unease growing. "Elon, this feels way out of my league. Maybe we should call the police or, I don't know, someone with authority?" Elon gave a dry laugh. "And tell them what? That some SUVs followed us after we embarrassed a bank? No, Michael, this isn't something the authorities will touch. If these people are who I think they are the authorities, or at least tied to them." Michael's chest tightened. "So what now? You're just going to waltz in there and confront them?" Elon's eyes gleamed with determination. "Not quite." He pulled out another device, a sleek, futuristic-looking tablet, and tapped a few buttons. The Tesla's dashboard lit up with a grid of commands. "This car isn't just a car," Elon explained. "It's a mobile command center, and right now, it's about to become their worst nightmare." Michael watched in stunned silence as Elon deployed drones from a hidden compartment in the Tesla's trunk. The small, silent machines zipped into the night sky, their cameras feeding live footage back to the dashboard. On the screen, the drones captured a meeting inside the compound. Men in suits were gathered around a table, documents and digital maps spread before them. Their faces were serious, their gestures animated as they discussed something that seemed urgent. "Gotcha," Elon murmured, zooming in on one of the men's faces. "Do you recognize them?" Michael asked. "Not all of them," Elon admitted. "But that one." He pointed to a man sitting at the head of the table. "That's the CEO of the bank you went to yesterday." Michael's jaw dropped. "You're kidding." "I wish I were," Elon replied, "but it makes sense. The bank wasn't just protecting their image, they were protecting their interests, and now they see me as a threat." Elon leaned back in his seat, his mind racing. This isn't just about discrimination. There's something bigger at play, something they don't want us to know about. Michael felt a chill run through him. "So, what do we do now?" Elon's gaze hardened, his resolve unshakable. "We expose them. Whatever they're planning, we shine a light on it so bright they can't hide. And we make sure the world knows what kind of people they really are." As the Tesla sat in the shadows, its technology quietly gathering evidence, Michael realized he had underestimated Elon Musk. This wasn't just a fight for fairness or dignity, it was a battle against corruption, secrecy, and power. And Elon wasn't just a billionaire or an innovator. He was a force of nature, unafraid to take on the giants of the world no matter the cost. For the first time in his life, Michael felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Because if someone like Elon was willing to stand up for the little guy, maybe, just maybe, the world still had a chance.